When I come across a piece of furniture at the thrift store that is under $10, I have a really hard time walking away and not buying it. This one came home with me. My name is Sarah, and I like to take things that are ugly and beat up or pulled out of the trash and make them beautiful again. Welcome to my channel. So I see a lot of people on YouTube flipping these mid-century modern pieces and bring back this beautiful wood tone. And I thought, can I do that? But there's like dings and nicks out of the veneer, and it's all pretty thin veneer. And I just kind of rolled my eyes and thought, I don't want to deal with thin veneer and try to sand all of it. I don't want to. So after looking it over, and there were some pretty good gashes in the veneer taken out on the bottom left and right corners, and I can't repair that. I have not attempted that skill level of furniture repair yet, and honestly, I just wanted something simple and easy to flip, so I'm like, you know what? We're going to paint this. It's going to look great. We're going to paint it, clean it up, sand it down a little, clean up that drawer because it's pretty nasty, but I'm pretty sure I can get that pretty clean. Put a nice coat of paint on it, and it's going to look great. It's going to be a super cute nightstand. First, I always clean my pieces up. This one has been sitting in my garage, but it wasn't that dirty, so I just got out my TSP and wiped it down real good. Took the drawer handle off so I can clean that up, and I always put my project pieces in this bowl. It's what I boil my hardware and bolts and things in as well, but that's how I keep everything safe. But this drawer was kind of gunky, so I got my shop vac out, swept it out, and there was dust on the bottom side of this cubby for the drawer, and often that bumpy stuff collects lint from my towels, so I want to try to suck up all the dust with the shop vac rather than use my towel. And then I cleaned everything as best I could with the TSP. There's like some gunky, sticky, maybe candy or something, this pink stuff on the drawer. And I just let the TSP sit and then go do something else and come back, scrub it, let it sit, come back. And eventually by the end, it came out really quite well. I was really pleased with how well the TSP cleaned it up. And the whole piece just cleaned up nicely. I did want to set it outside for a little bit just because when pieces are sitting in my garage, I don't know, they just get mildewy and musty smelling. Musty. Let's go with musty smell. That's a better word for it. No mildew, although there was a little. Anyway, I just let it sun in the sun. In the drawer, there was some of this, made me think of puffy paint. You know, the t-shirt puffy paint, that green stuff. And I got my screwdriver and chiseled out what I could and decided, you know what, I'll sand this. I did pull out, I don't want to call it a carbide scraper because I bought it from Harbor Freight, but it's just a paint scraper tool that has multiple tips on it. So I used that to get, it looked again like somebody put puffy paint on different parts of this drawer detail, and I wanted to scrape that off rather than try to sand it off. And this worked quite well. If you watched my video talking about tools that I use regularly, I don't use this one very regularly, but in cases like this, it's really nice to have. So once I cleaned that up, wiped it all down, we're good to go. Now with this hardware, I just kind of scrubbed it up to see what we're kind of working with. Should I paint it? Whatever. I took steel wool. I've never done this before. I don't know why it hasn't crossed my mind, but just to kind of scuff it up, I didn't want to mess with boiling it in vinegar water because it's just one little piece. So I thought I'd just clean it up with the steel wool to get it ready for painting. I did have this acrylic paint because I thought I like to use what I have as much as I can, and I could not find my can of gold spray paint. So I found this acrylic paint, and I put it on, and it was like running. It was a hot mess. I was like, nope, not going to work. I'm going to have to buy spray paint. These nails were coming loose, so I took a minute to hammer them in, but then later I think they kind of wiggled out anyway, so that might have been futile, but it was a good effort. With those chipped areas on the front, I used Bondo to fill them in. I am not trusting my wood filler right now as it is quite old and not very sturdy, but Bondo is. So this took a minute, but I filled it in. It's tricky. You got to be fast with this stuff, but once I got that filled in and while it was drying, I took my sander to the drawer and realized there were like pin marks and different scuff marks and such all over the inside of the drawer. So I took my electric sander to every area I could get and cleaned it up that way. And then I took just a piece of sandpaper. I'm just using 220 grit sandpaper and hand sanded the corners to get everything cleaned up. And it looked really good. There was a little bit of green left, and I went and got my little toothpick picky thing to try to pick out the green. And I thought, this is going to take forever, and I'm not a detailed person like that. So I thought, you know what, it'll be fine. It's way better, it'll be fine. So with 220 grit sandpaper, I scuff sanded. Just want to, scuff up the top coat. Don't want to do too much. I did think about sanding this down back to the wood and staining it, but I decided, no, we'll just paint. It doesn't take long for Bondo to dry, so once the drawer was done, I could just turn around and tackle the Bondo parts and get those all nice and smooth. And you definitely want to get those smooth because you will see ridges when you paint if you don't. And then with that 220 grit sandpaper, I scuff sanded the rest of the piece just to, again, give a little bit of a rougher texture for paint to stick to. So this is interesting. I knew the top was more shiny, it had a higher gloss. So instead of the 220 grit sandpaper, I moved down to a 180 to try to really scuff the top up so that the primer would stick and have a nice, good adherence, because I've been burned by this before. But I'll get to why this is interesting in a minute. With the sanding done, I wiped everything down to clean it off and make sure that there's no dust on my pieces, double check that my Bondo looks nice and smooth. There was water damage, another reason to paint, and everything looked good. So I have been using Fusion Mineral Paint lately, and I have loved it. But I have to order it online or drive an hour to get it, and I didn't have any, and I needed to get this piece done. So I just went to my hardware store and bought Zinsser primer and furniture paint, because while I trust Fusion to stick without primer, I don't trust big box store paint to stick without primer. So I bought both, and then I got my gold spray paint and primed everything up, and the primer went fine. I didn't have a problem with that. That went on okay, and I got it tinted gray so that it would be easier to go into the black next. But once my primer was done, and this is where it gets interesting, I did a scratch test on the top because I was a little nervous with how well it would hold on that shiny surface, and I was not happy with it. The sides were fine, but the top did not hold. So I got I think it's a carbide scraper, whatever. I got one of my flat blades out and scraped off as much of the paint as I could. And it was interesting because some places held well. Other places obviously did not. So this was the right step for me to scrape it off and sand again. I needed that in order to ensure a good finish. If I'm selling a piece, I've got to make sure this is quality. I don't want to be selling something that's going to scratch easy. So I just sanded it down, cleaned it up, and did another coat of primer and did a scratch test, and that took. So I was happy with that. It set me back a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. With the hardware, I do light coats of paint over and over and over to cover all the different angles and areas. This takes time and patience, but not too much time. As long as you do light coats, you can get hardware painted within a day or two. All this other stuff takes a couple days, so you might as well just let it dry. This is important to kind of smooth up your primer before going into your paint. One reason I don't like doing primer is because I feel there's more risk of brush marks left on your piece when you're done. So I don't like doing it, but it's important to get good adhesion. So I'm doing it with this because I'm not using the paint I would prefer to use, just because I didn't have time to get what I want. So once my piece was lightly scuff sanded and then I wipe it down with a damp cloth, I went in with this, it's Sherwin-Williams Tricorn Black. I've used this color before on some other pieces, and I've used Sherwin-Williams cabinet paint on my own kitchen cabinets, but I just did white, no color tint at all. I might have done a higher gloss than this. This, I think, was semi-gloss. No, this was satin. This paint was really thick. I did not like using it. And I did this at the end of the day with poor lighting. And by the next day, I was so disappointed with the gloppiness that was left once dried. It does have decent leveling, but this was hard to work with, and you cannot go back over an area once it's like sat for 5 seconds. Like, you've got to get it on quick and get it on smooth, or it's too late. So I just went in with sandpaper, did 220 grit again, and sanded smooth the areas that were gloppy, hoping that the second coat will cover it up mostly and it will be okay. So once I got that as smooth as best I thought I could, I went back in and did another coat of paint. With this also being thicker, it did feel like it took longer to dry. Granted, we hit a hot spell and it was kind of more humid, so that takes more time anyway. But once I got the second coat on and checked it this morning, I was so disappointed with the gloppy spots, because I tried to do thinner coat so that I wouldn't have the glops, and you can see all these areas that just did not get painted right. It's I'm so disappointed. I regret buying this paint. I regret using it. I bought this can hoping to paint a couple other pieces with this, and I will probably return it because I do not want to work with this. This is very disappointing. I will probably make the hour drive to go get the paint I want, because this, I can't work with this. So I might try to buy the paint I like and put one coat over top of this and see if I can salvage it. But really, I'm just kind of done with this piece as far as with this paint. So the video is kind of ending here unfinished. You can see what it looks like as is. I can't sell this. I could use it, but it doesn't look nice. And I don't want to use it. I wanted to sell this. So this piece is not finished, but for this video's sake, I need to be done. So here's the final piece. As of now, it's a disappointment. I definitely do not recommend Sherwin-Williams furniture paint. It is very difficult to work with, and I will not be buying that again. So hopefully this video was inspiring to you, and you can learn from my mistakes, but hopefully you've learned other things too. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in my next video with new paint.